You're watching Face to Face. I'm your host, Tim Vince. I am very happy to be joined by my good friend, Adrian Hawkes. Been a Christian leader for many, many years, but you don't sort of hide behind the church walls, Adrian. I don't know where to start to pitch in at this decade or another decade, but just tell us a little of how you came to faith.
Oh, that's...
And you don't ever get warning of the questions.
Yeah,
so.
That's very useful. Actually, I was a 5-year-old,
Yeah.
and actually it was my parents talked to me about being a Christian too. I can remember it very clearly saying, well, I go to church with you. Yes. So I must be a Christian. They explained that, it's like standing in a garage doesn't make you a car. Yeah. They said, okay, that's not how it works. And I remember just all by myself talking to God and saying, I don't know what it's all about, but help me. And really from that point on, I would say even as a 5-year-old, it changed my life.
That's amazing. It's amazing. And it's given you a kind of perspective.
Yes, yeah.
It's different.
I guess, yes.
And so you haven't, I wouldn't say you've had an orthodox journey in your Christian ministry. You've done quite a lot. You're definitely on the entrepreneurial wing of the church. Just say how your Christian faith has worked.
Well, I suppose in the early days, being part of a church setup. Yeah. I mean, I have to be honest and say sometimes I'd say, God, I like you very much, but why do you put such idiots in charge of what's going on?
Only when you were younger, because now you wouldn't say that now, would you?
Possibly. So
being in charge yourself.
Yeah, well, yes. And that was the reality. And I remember it was about 18 or 19, there was a friend of mine, some people might even know him, a guy called Tony Stone. He came into our church. We were running some things for young people. It was quite a big church. And he challenged us that it's not in. We thought he'd come to preach, and he did for a bit, and then he got us all together and said, "Right, off you go out in the streets and talk about God." Wow! And it was the most scariest thing that had ever happened in my experience. But being out there, we were actually in coffee bars and like nightclubs of the day. I mean, I'm a little bit older, but and it was a reality of, good gracious me, I have got something that these people haven't got, and actually they could do with it really. Yeah. It would change their lives.
So it's sort of by the doing builds up your confidence.
Yes.
And the fear of doing.
Oh, yeah, it was scary.
You would never start.
Yeah.
But and then I can't completely place your accent, but is it north?
Don't be, no.
North London.
Birmingham.
Oh, you're Birmingham.
Exactly.
Got it now.
Yes,
no, of course, that
Birmingham, yeah, Midlands.
Because I know
the
that
Midlands
you're
are
based.
The balanced people, of course.
I knew you had done some work up in Yorkshire. You're based in North and East London.
That's correct.
Now, but you're actually a Brummie.
Originally,
so you
yes.
Come down to the capital to save.
Well, I lived in the Middlesbrough area for 5 years.
Okay.
I went to college in Surrey, so I've mixed around a bit. Really.
And you mentioned, because we had a cup of tea before we started this recording, but you did children's camps up in Bridlington.
Yes, well, when I was part of a denomination, I was running camps. I ran a huge camp in the north of England in Fraythorpe, which was we used to get about 400 young people coming for a couple of weeks every year.
And how long ago was that?
Oh.
How old are they now, sort of thing?
Well, I
80s?
moved to London in 1974.
Wow.
And the 74, I think, was the last time I ran the Fraythorpe Youth Camp. Wow. The denomination then transferred me, and I ran a huge, even bigger one in the Isle of Wight.
So anyway, I would definitely want to ask you some questions about where we're at when you've been around as long as you have, around the block as it were, where we're at as a nation. But tell us a bit about your international work.
Oh,
I know these are big open questions, but
it is a big open question. The reality is,
done work in Africa, in
Sri Lanka,
Sri Lanka.
the reality is that I've tried to avoid going to some of these countries because what happens is, for me, I think, why aren't you doing this? This could, so I think, let me stay away and then I won't get involved. So both in Sri Lanka and...
But you've had an impact. You were talking
I hope
about
so.
Kenya, when
Yes.
they had a drought in a village. Just tell us a little bit about that one.
Well, Kenya, I went first of all because somebody invited me to do some training, and then many years later I was there at a friend's wedding. Actually, I took the wedding, and the two guys came to me at the end of the wedding and said, "You changed our lives." And I laughed, and they said, "Don't laugh, it's true." I said, "What way?" And they said, "Well, your thinking and your approach to what it's all about changed our thinking. We were in the middle of a drought, and we went back to our village and said, we're asking this guy to help us." And I'm going, "I don't know what to do. But let me send some friends to your village." It's a place called Mitamingi. Right. So I sent these two friends of mine to Mitamingi, who said, "What you need is water." They financed some water tanks for the area, showed them how to clean the water, and then they said, "What you need to do in the good times, you need to preserve the food." And they, if in a funny sort of way, they built barns and put the maize in the barns. So these two guys said to me, "We're in drought at the moment, but our village has enough food because of what you taught us." I didn't teach them. You get the credit sometimes for these things that you didn't do. But the barns were working, and they said, "We're actually feeding the next village and showing them how to do it." So
fantastic.
It's changed our whole lives.
Great principle. And then in terms of children, you're doing the same in one sense. You're sort of planting seeds, and it has an influence that you've got no idea where it will end up. Really.
No.
Because I know you initially, because I know you a lot more than the Christian school, but I met you in London,
yes.
I don't know, maybe 9 odd years ago, and it was amazing really how you created this school with each of these kids being given something, from the scriptures, but also in their education, in an area you would think that it's not possible. Financially not possible, apart from
else. That's true. I mean, I've had people come to me and say, "We could open a school and make some money." And I'm like, "Be my guest."
Exactly.
I don't know how it makes money.
No.
It's a bottomless pit for money sometimes.
Covering costs is the challenge.
Oh, it's such a challenge.
Yeah. But again, a generation later, because I've just got an image of you on That's Life, like Nicholas Winton, and Esther Ranson said, "Would everyone whose life has been changed by Adrian Hawkes, would they stand up?"
Yeah.
But just tell us a bit now, and we'll go into the specifics, because you've written a number of books. Yeah. You've lived long enough to see changes in our culture and in our society. Yeah. And you've even written a book called Culture Clash.
Yes.
As that sort of conjures up images of a kind of clash of civilizations, but you just tell me what that's all about.
Probably I ought to tell you why I wrote it. I mean, I was working with another friend of mine who ran the biggest counselling training company in the UK, and I'd worked with this lady for a long time and done training sessions for them. Actually, we took the training program to Kenya, and it's still running there now. But she said to me, "We've got people who've already got their degree in counselling, but we now need CPD, continual professional development stuff. Can you think of anything?" And I said, "Yeah, I think I could put something together for you." So she laughed and said, "Well, go and do it." So I wrote a course, which then ended up as the book. That's the bit of the cheat side, really. But I wrote the course that we delivered for people who'd already done their degree. But you've always got in all of these disciplines onward going training. So.
But the essence of it is working with people of different cultures.
Well, the reality is that to me, it was a bit of a revelation, sort of researching it and understanding it, is that we don't think about our culture. In fact, I was doing some lectures on that course in Norwich, and people on the course said, "Why are we learning about this? Aren't we all the same? What is culture?" And the reality is we don't analyse, why do I think like I think? Why do I act like I act? Why do I progress things like I progress things? And they're all inside of us, and there's education, business, our family are all producing that in us, but we never question, why do I think like this? Maybe your thinking is wrong. Do you follow me?
Yeah.
So,
and there's not necessarily one culture that has the monopoly on a Christian
well,
faith
my
or
answer is
Christian
that
spirit.
every culture has something that is valuable, but lots of cultures, including the British culture, has things in it that you think, oh dear me, I wish that our culture was not like that. But we
it's a very mixed culture now, isn't it? I mean, you can't really say.
Well, it depends where you are. Yes,
now.
yes.
It's
and it is. And I live in London, which is very multicultural. I would argue that enriches us, not detracts from us.
Yeah. And yes, I totally agree with that. By the way,
but we don't analyse, why do I think like this? And actually, I mean, being brought up in a sort of Christian home. There was lots of things as I grew up, and particularly when I went to college, I started to ask questions. Why do I think that this is right? And I have to be honest and say that was a painful experience. And there's some of the things I went, good gracious me, I don't believe that anymore. Because the way I had absorbed it was not.
That's right. It was
and the other things I thought,
narrow.
That is absolutely rock solid. I need to hang on to that.
Because I grew up, my dad had a lot of Christian centres, but they were for all churches. So there's a lot of cultural differences between churches. But I grew up and thought, oh, well, that's an expression, and you know, a common faith, but completely different cultures, whether they're ethnic. And by the way, the ethnic churches are the ones that are more alive now than all of the legacy churches.
I think the funny thing is that we assume that our culture is right.
Yeah.
Being a very naughty person, when I was in Kenya not so long ago, one of the things that I noticed is that all the guys are sitting around drinking tea and chatting, and all the ladies have got a baby on their back and they're ploughing the fields and working very hard. So I go to the guys and say, why is it that the ladies are doing all the work and you're sitting here relaxing? And they said, oh, you don't understand our culture, Adrian. They like it like that.
Yeah. Completely opposite.
So then I go to the ladies, being very wicked, and say, your men all say that you like doing all the work while they sit and chat. And all the ladies go, in other words, what a load of rubbish.
Or he's coming out to really stir up trouble.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly.
But anyway, you grew up in a culture.
They would say, you don't understand our culture.
Yeah, exactly.
That's their answer.
Exactly. But definitely it's changed, hasn't it, Adrian? I mean, how long since you've been in London? So
1974 I came first.
Yeah, so in that time alone, a lot of cultural changes and more multicultural.
It's become, and I live in a very multicultural area.
And so my question is, what's the challenge of the gospel? You know, irrespective of a culture, what is the challenge?
The challenge of the gospel?
Yeah, the challenge is facing, outreach for, the Christian faith. Because it's not really, we grew up in a Christian country, but now it isn't identified in any way as Christian.
I would always argue that it's never been a Christian country.
No, but identified.
We identified as that. I think the problem is that we have totally confused religion and relationships. Christianity, I would argue, people don't like you saying it, is not a religion. It's about relationship with each other and a relationship with the Creator God. That's a whole new ball game.
Yeah, that is true.
And a bit like the Muslims, I would say it's revelation as well, rather than religion.
And that was and possibly is in some churches, a missing factor. So religion sort of took over. Even, we've got churches on every corner, and yet buildings and rituals and traditions, but I think the relationship aspect probably is lacking.
Well,
and then in a relational world, people aren't attracted to it.
Just to be really controversial, William Tyndale, know who he is.
Great hero, yeah.
Your great hero.
One of.
He never...
You're my other one.
Thank you, Tim. William Tyndale never ever uses the word church in his translation of Scripture. And he was the first person to translate the Bible into English.
That's right.
And except once, he uses the word church in the book of Acts, where you remember they healed the person and they go into the area and they brought people and they said, oh, these people are gods. Yeah. He said they came to the, Tyndale says, he translates it, they came to the door of the church.
Yeah, amazing.
But that church was a heathen temple. Yeah. And it was a heathen priest had come to acknowledge these men. Yeah. And that's the only time, because the Greek word, of course, is ecclesia, which means called out ones. Why were they called out? They were called out because they were there as the rulers of a city. Yeah. It was political. Yeah, you've pretty well summed it up. You know, church and politics hasn't had a very good record. We need to be in the world. Yes. Jesus says, go into all the world. He didn't say, protect yourself in a building. Yeah, exactly. By the way, we have our services on the channel called Church Without Walls. Oh, that's a great one. It is good, like isn't it? And when we go to the Middle East, we go as a Church Without Walls tour. Yeah, which is quite good when you come against the walls. Yeah, yeah. By the way, there's so many silos, there's so many barriers, even between churches, you know, with everyone's thinking they're it. Yes. Well, recently, I shouldn't say this, but recently I was, as I want to do, because we run a foster care agency, I was trying to speak in a church about fostering. I said, let me have 5 minutes. And the guy who's in charge of the place said, are you a Christian organisation? Yeah. I said, I don't know what you mean by that. Yeah. He said, and he made the decision almost, he said, we can't have you, you're not Christian enough. Yeah. So I said, okay, I wonder who he banks with. That's right, I don't know what that's got to do with it. I wonder where he buys the chairs. yeah, exactly. Oh no, absolutely right. Yeah, it's like... Oh, I know, I used to have people criticising me for coming on Christian TV, and I said to them, well, would you, if you could share the gospel on the BBC, would you go on the BBC? Yeah, yes. Is that Christian? Yeah. You know, and so the thing is, you can't please everyone, but you have to follow your calling. But I mean, if we go back to what Jesus says, it's go into the world. That's it, exactly. So talking of which, you've done a lot of work with children. I've mentioned the school, but you were, and I don't want to get the title of the book wrong, but you were a foster carer for many years. Yes, we were. Yeah. I mean, that is a funny story, really. I mean, I was phoned by a girl in our church at the time. I'll use the word church. Yeah. So we phoned by this young girl. She's about 14-year-old, and another girl in the same fellowship said, phone Adrian. This girl said, my friend, we're on a school camp, my friend is being fostered and the foster father is sleeping with her. Really? If she runs, he's told her if she tells anybody he'll kill her. Dear, oh dear. If she runs away, can she run and stay with you? So I did some checking up and I was told if you do that, you'll be had up for kidnapping. I mean, it was a good end to the story because I rang the local authority and they moved that girl out within hours. Yeah. And I don't know what happened to the guy. I hope he got arrested. But I do remember in Hastings that he was the deacon of a Baptist church. Really? And without going into too many details, Billy Joe Jenkins, and that was a situation where certainly in the court case, it wasn't a good relationship. Yeah. But I said to my wife, you know, we need to get some training to understand how to deal with an issue like this if it ever comes our way again. So we signed up for the local authority foster care training course. Wow. How long ago? Oh, probably 30 or 40 years ago. Yeah. Wow. We had both of us had no intention of fostering. Yeah. But then, in the training course, I understood the statistics and I sat there thinking, this is terrible. I should do, I felt guilty really. I should do something about this. So we ended up saying, yeah, we'll foster, but we had no intention to start with. And that was the journey. I mean, I have to say that things like that to us have happened accidentally.
Yeah.
I was accidentally in Kenya and accidentally in Sri Lanka and accidentally ended up as a foster
and
carer.
accidentally set up a whole community around the country.
Yeah, it was
That's some accident. Yeah. But, so you think God's hand might have been on your life?
I am sure, yes,
Yeah.
yes, I am sure.
Yeah. And you've got your wife, you know, full commitment.
Yeah, yeah.
Because you've got to have support, don't you, from both everyone?
Yes,
really.
and you need, if you're fostering, you need a good support group around you, really.
Yeah.
And in that sense, churches are ideal, really, because, or they should be ideal, let me put it that way, because they ought to be care and support. I mean, I often quote James when I'm talking to people in church about fostering. James, in the book of James, it says, true religion is what?
Go on, you quote it and I'll tell you whether it's
to look
accurate.
after the widows and the fatherless.
Right.
That is true religion.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
And I think to myself sometimes, do we really read this and understand that?
I know. And
so for me, it's working that out. You know?
and that is a feature of our day, isn't it?
Yeah.
The absent fathers.
Yes. Yes.
It's a shocker for kids. I can't imagine it because I wasn't in that. I mean, I had a very disciplinarian, you know, patrician type father. But I could never imagine growing up without him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, there is.
I was disciplined. I don't know whether it shows, but you know, in the days past. But yeah, there's so many kids who've never had that experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think as an agency, we get something like 150 referrals every day from local authorities around the country. Wow. They're not just coming to us. It's probably bigger than that, actually. And what you realise is there's a huge breakdown in families and children are coming into the system.
So we didn't used to be a Christian country, but we did have fair stability, a level of stability.
Yeah, there were certain Christian values that we have passed into the culture.
Yeah, that's true.
And those values were very helpful, and stable family life was one of those.
Yeah.
But, you know, it wasn't always good.
No.
You know.
No, if you've got an abusive husband, normally.
Yeah.
You know, and
I mean, the Africans say it takes a whole village to bring up a child.
Yeah.
When I lived in the north of England.
Well, that's interesting because we have this sort of atomized, individualistic society.
Yes.
So no one knows who the other members of the village are anymore.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. Go on, I interrupted.
Well, I think that I lived in the north of England and I watched the clearance of one of the biggest slum areas of the time. They were back-to-back houses with a toilet shared between about 5 or 6 houses. And why? Because I'm a Midlander, I'm now living in the north. It's like it was a cultural clash for me. And I'm living there and I'm looking at it and going, why are these people protesting the destruction of their houses? And they were moving these people to. I had one of the nice houses. They're much better than these houses. Why are they protesting? They stood in front of the bulldozers.
Wow. Because it was their
What I didn't understand, it only permeated my brain later, was they were not really protesting the destruction of those bad houses. They were protesting the destruction of the community. Because in that community, if your parents were bad, you probably had an uncle up the road, or supposed uncle, whose family was organised and good. Yeah. So there was a wider influence. Now we think that the normal family is 2.5 children and whatever the latest car is.
Yeah. Well, the cars won't survive this. There's net zero, I don't think.
No, they won't.
So you've written quite a lot from your experience.
Yeah.
So we're in the last 5 minutes, but what would you, of all of your books, what would you highlight as the
people want to foster
most relevant
and have a spare room.
Yes.
I tell you what.
Yeah.
If they phone me or phone our office,
Yeah.
we'll first, let's say the first 3 or 4 that ring up, I'll send them a free book. Yeah. And some of our bump to tell you what about fostering and see whether they're interested.
And so you've been driven by your Christian faith and conviction, you know, and calling, but you're not exclusively. You would take anyone who is prepared to make a commitment to fostering.
We're not saying that we would only take Christians. Of course not. No, we're not saying that at all. I mean, it's a big wide world out there,
it is.
and you see,
it's a challenge, isn't it, to know when?
It's a challenge. When I was first fostering for the local authority, it was funny because at the same time I was helping to run the church, and basically the local social workers would bring children to us and say, "These people go to church. You don't have to go with them." I used to, okay.
Oh, they said it to the
kids. They would say it to the kids, you know. Then after about 2 years, they come and they bring children because they see what you do.
Yeah.
And they would come along and say, "These people are part of a church. You might like to go with them."
That's
so
brilliant.
it was like a complete changeover, really.
Brilliant.
You know, it's like.
And just the last couple of minutes, Adrian, we talked a bit about the past. How do you see things developing in the future? Because you're saying you're inundated now.
Yeah.
Is it going to get any better? Is there anything government can do to sort things out?
In the United Kingdom at the moment, there are, in England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, there are 90,000 children in care.
Wow.
By 2025, it will be 100,000. It goes up every year.
Wow.
And there is another 125,000. So if you want to add the figures, that's 225,000. Another 125,000 are in what's called kinder care, which is not fostering, but they are fostering, but they are not the parents of the children. Okay, they're friends of the family or uncles or aunts. Then there is always, if there's 90,000 in care, there's another 90,000 on what they call the at-risk register, which are children who are likely to come into care. So the need is huge.
Wow.
So
well, on that happy note, I mean, let's just finish. You've got a 10-second slot to give us some hope.
Really, the people in the churches can do something about this, and we could be effective in just supporting and follow James's example in Scripture and say, we're going to care for these people.
Yeah, wonderful.
Which is what we ought to be doing, really.
Well done. I can think of a good film for Adrian, One Life, but I don't want to confuse it with Nicholas Winton. Thank you for joining us on Face to Face.